next item up to talk about, which we're going to, the activities and clubs, Pam, I'm going to pull that up because we had some stuff, but we don't have all of it to discuss.
Is that included in this, Pam?
Yes, it is included.
Okay.
There's a summary sheet.
Okay, all right,
There's a summary sheet.
all right, I'm sorry.
You
Is
should
it out of
have.
order, maybe? Or is it in
It
the,
might be out of order. It will look the same as the one you just saw.
This one. All right,
It
this one
has
right
the
here.
blue lines.
All right, before us, we have a summary of proposed activity budget cuts.
Hang on. What is it we're looking at?
This one right here,
Yeah,
that
it's
says
this
summary of proposed
Okay.
activity budget.
I have it.
All right, total cuts of 106,216.
Well, it's actually the 129,483. And what I did is I just showed you, this is the document, the original budget guideline document from the community forums. That was the final one. That's from December 6th on page 9. That was what was originally projected in this document that's up on our website still. So that's what I was referring to. If you're saying that doesn't match other documents, it wouldn't match this one. Because when we made that projection, we didn't include the board accounts, that we wouldn't have to fund those board line items again for activities and clubs that weren't going to run. And then that was revised on 6/7. There was a document that Chris Walton presented to the board that went through all of the reductions in that original document, but updated them. And it was made one step more accurate. And the reason that was that in the original budget guidelines, circumstances like a person who had been coaching or who had been sponsoring a club, when they moved to their 8th year, they then jump on the stipend schedule.
Excuse me,
for
Pam,
credit for
are you
experience.
referring to a document? I have no idea what you're referring to.
It went to the board. I'm just saying that, yeah, the board did get this document.
Laura, in your board packet,
Yeah.
there's a memorandum from Pam that talks about pay to participate. Then there's an actual,
I'm just
form.
telling what these other, when I'm mentioning
it's
other
got this one right
documents, they were other documents that the public and the board had. So if you were saying that number seems different, it did seem different than projections from before. And those were all public documents that had been out there before. I'm just trying to explain to you with my notes on the side why from our original projection and our revised document there were some differences and why this accurate number is now accurate. It's accurate because it accounts for those activities and all related board accounts to run those activities, to pay for supplies, for instance, building sets for the musical, and all of those you had asked me at one point to give you information on all those extra board accounts, and I created spreadsheets and gave that all to you in the past. So I'm just summarizing it here for you and saying that allowed us to save a little bit more money than just stipends.
So right now, if I took the 113 minus the 129, that 16,000 would be stuff beyond stipends.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
And then on the original list, we were going to, and I had talked to the board about this before, the Best Buddies assistant was going to be cut, and we were just going to run it with one Best Buddies stipend, but the national organization doesn't allow you to do that. You have to have a regular education teacher and a special education teacher. Both of those positions by national charter have to be filled, so we put that stipend back in. So that was the only thing that was added back in from.
How much was that?
That stipend was, I can tell you in a moment, for that particular person was $2,593. So that had been added back in.
So, are we going to discuss this yet, or?
Yeah.
Right.
We agreed on, did we not vote in a $25 increase in activities?
it's to come.
To come, okay. Well, if we are going to do that, there's a couple of, this list was developed prior to some other developments. And then if we are going to include the $25 fee, that's an additional $37,500 in additional monies that kids are paying that should save several of these clubs.
Was that part of the original cost reduction, the increase in the fee and the cuts in the, from the original document we previously held up?
The draft
No,
document.
it was never figured in to go to offset these particular clubs.
But in the draft document for that $25 activity fee increase was used to increase revenue, am I right?
It was just a revenue generating fee to bring in some money, but was not to go
Targeted for-
directly to
One thing that we
offset
can,
the club.
not what you're doing.
with that additional revenue, or Laura, one thing we need to consider, and it hasn't been considered in the past, when, and I'll use just a random club, I'm not even sure if this is, if the art club is here on a Friday or Thursday evening working on something, the lights are on maybe in that classroom, or there's an additional cleanup, maybe there's an additional wear and tear on facility. So some of that additional revenue coming in will help offset that cost that no one's probably ever figured into the budgeted amount.
Yeah, but we're gonna cut clubs. We can't charge more money and then cut them all.
Here's a way to look at it. By the fact that we're charging the $25 more, we're cutting less than you otherwise would be. So that the money is fungible.
But we can't charge $25 to put towards the educational fund. We can't ask for money for salaries. We can't ask a $25
Everything
fee
comes-
increase for salaries.
But everything comes out of, the majority of your payments come out of the educational fund. So unless we designate this to the operations and maintenance account.
But I mean philosophically, so are we, what we're really doing, we're asking people to give us an extra $25 at registration to cover salaries and not to keep some of the clubs that broaden the experience
Or
of
wouldn't some
the
of
school?
those salaries, by salaries you mean stipends?
No, I mean, if we cut all the clubs, we're not talking stipends, then we would
We
be.
didn't cut all the clubs.
We didn't cut all of those.
But if
So-
we cut
And
these
then
Certain
two,
clubs.
And in the draft document that was presented for scenario one for the first year, that $25 increase in the activity fee was generating revenue to help to the bottom line. It wasn't targeted that it would go towards clubs or anything else. It was to increase revenue in our bottom line. It wasn't targeted at all for that.
so are we gonna tell the community $25 to offset our bottom line?
No, what we're saying is we need $25 increase to, one, cover our cost for everything involved with the activities, am I right? Of what
She
we're
says
doing.
textbook, general
Yeah,
supplies, and
the-
Yeah.
full
There's a
curriculum.
Textbook,
memo
general, yeah.
included in your board packet that explains what this year's explanation for the increase in fee was for.
It's right after the chart.
We pay a big chunk of money for the clubs and stipends, a big chunk. And the increase of $25 was to make sure that there was additional money to put in the budget as a whole, all the cuts that we proposed and told the public about.
But if, in support of Laura's position, but said a different way, and I don't know if you got the email I sent about this, Pam, but we're cutting 15% out of $1 million, $1,050,000 athletic budget, and ended up, we didn't cut any sports, except diving, if you count that. We're cutting $100,000 out of a $224,000 club, which is, whatever it is, 40-some percent. So I asked the question, why are we cutting significantly clubs versus the, in essence, almost, I mean, all the sports are available except for diving.
Right.
And
Well-
clubs, we're cutting a ton of the clubs. So the availability, in one way of looking at it is we're placing more stock with what the, and we're still gonna fund sports to the tune of $885,000 less to pay to participate. And if we, again, Dr. Burnett, it doesn't say it in here, but he said several times that $25 was for clubs. I agree with Laura on that. If you counted that in there too, I mean, we're making a significant cut to clubs
Well, I
versus
can
sports.
answer that question. We were looking, when we were doing this planning, remember, we weren't just looking at year one, we were looking at year two.
Right.
So next year, so it's a 1.9 million reduction this year, a 1.7, almost 8 million the following year. So we decided, and at that point, all clubs and sports would be gone. And so we said, let's, some schools, when they're facing this, get rid of clubs and sports on the front end to protect entirely the academic program. And we philosophically said we would take a hit everywhere. So if everything's going to be gone the second year, all clubs, then we can prepare for that by doing half the first year, half the second, rather than wiping them all out, or obliterating particular sports and not others. And everything was discussed, and that was the conclusion that the board and the administration came to, was that we would take the hit academically, we'd take a hit athletically, and we would take some hit in the clubs. And so that was when the philosophy came up that if we were going to reduce clubs, we would try and keep the clubs that didn't have a duplicate in the academic day. And so that interests could at least be kids that had, in order to keep them engaged and active in school, they would be either their sport would exist or their club would exist, that they couldn't get that interest met during the school day. So, and I know we've talked about that. So there wasn't a good solution. There was going to have to be a cut made. And looking down the road, it was half the first year, basically half the second. So it kind of comes out to activities took a little bit of a bigger hit the first year, and it's in that budget document as 84,000, close to 85,000 the second year, whereas then athletics would be entirely gone. So I don't know if that, this board might not agree with that philosophy, but that was, after the discussions and the debates and looking at it different ways, that's where we had come.
But nothing left with sports. All the sports remain intact. Do
Yes.
you have
Right.
the numbers for how many kids participate in clubs? So two questions I
Right,
have.
we did
That
give
was
that
all
to the
provided.
board.
Okay.
I have a copy if you want to see
And,
it.
okay, and do we know that the kids who participate in the clubs, are they actually in those classes? Because one of the philosophy was that if we had a class, we could cut the club. But is that necessarily true? Maybe the kids who don't take those classes are in the clubs because the class is too difficult or more extensive. And maybe that premise wouldn't have been an accurate premise to start cutting clubs.
Was enrollment and popularity also looked at, Pam, too? So that if you had a club that was significantly well-attended and justified the cost of the stipend?
No, we did, that's looked at every year when we decide to come, when the administration would come to the board to renew clubs. So there's a committee that reviews stipends, looks at participation. We do get participation rates and reports at the end of the year. And then they meet back and come back and ask for certain stipends to go away because those clubs are being, dismissed for lack of involvement. Other clubs are being asked to perhaps now fund because they've been piloted for several years and have picked up attendance. Does that answer your question?
Could you explain one other thing in here? I know it's on other reports, it doesn't jump out. Why are the weight room and the wellness supervisors in clubs instead of athletics? And what is being eliminated by cutting those people out?
And the reason that they are on this is that's the way the original documents of stipends were created, because basically what that is it is an activity for kids, and they go after school, they work out in the weight room or the spin cycle room or before school, and that is something that they do, and we have a supervisor there for their safety and to observe them. So
You do not have to be an athlete, correct?
you do not have to be an athlete. That's open to anybody.
Just have to bring a school ID. So we're eliminating the before-school option, which was 6 to 7:30, and after-school wellness center and weight room from 3:30 to 5.
But, I mean, with the need for kids to get exercise, is that well-placed reduction of not quite $14,000 if were kids actually using it?
We probably had an average of, we just brought this up, probably an average of about 20, 25 kids after school that used the weight room. Not a lot of kids used the wellness center, probably an average of about 10 kids per day
Okay.
at most. So the numbers weren't real high.
Okay.
I think it's important for us to consider moving forward as co-department chair for that department, because I have a strong belief with Tim on that. We need to make sure that our PE and wellness classes are really covering fitness-based activities so that our adolescents here are getting the exercise they need and their heart rates up.
All right, any other questions for Pam?
Well, I do, I have to do the math because again, there's no totals. So when I finish the math, and part of the referendum, the wellness center.
There is a total donor.
We
Last
didn't-
page. Last
Oh,
page.
those are, that was not
I
given.
would go off
again.
her summary page. What we had them do is create a summary for this packet, because I know this topic's been going on for a few, just as a superintendent in waiting and observing the meetings,
What are you trying to figure out?
I've watched a lot of discussion occur with the same reports, and I see people keep coming back and working on the same reports, so I'm trying to make it easier for the board to understand where we're going in their final decision, so that we're not working in a circle.
So if I add this up, there's 581 spots, which is about half the number of spots for sports. But yet, the total allotted budget was significantly several times more. I'm talking about, I think the cuts are unfair and
Well, I
heavily
think-
weighted.
With the clubs, though, I think what you need to take into
Clubs.
to consideration is that, with the exception of supervision and a classroom, the overall activities will not exceed what the athletics will. So for a weight contest, you have to factor in transportation, the athletic trainer, you have to factor in all that. Where with a club, their budget is a lot lower, even though it's servicing more kids.
Right, we service almost half as many that are in sports, but we only spend 200,000. If we had to cut something, we should have started slicing sports. I mean, I hate to say that, but you get more kids that have an activity that could last all year.
I think your point is well taken, and I think that's something that this board moving forward needs to discuss, but being July 12th and us having registration next week, this is not a topic that can go back to the drawing board for this upcoming school year.
Is there any
We
other?
have to get
is
some
there
of
any
this
other
stuff out.
Yeah, well, definitely one, the ecology club, because we have parents screaming that C team is gone.
Look at the number of people in that one, Laura, it was pretty low.
Well,
It
it's
was very
24, but what I know for a fact is on their work days. And like I said, we're cutting clubs that, I had a T-shirt I wore to camp, RB serves, RB gives back. That's the one club that gave back to the community. They'd get 60 kids in Waubonsie Woods, and they have a couple of work days every year. It costs $1,700. You got that many hours donated to the county, to the community, and we don't even have C-Team now. Why would we? I think that one needs to be put back on, because C-Team, at that point, when you cut this one, was a go.
Make a motion.
Oh,
They make a motion?
All right.
We'll take it separately and vote it
all
separately.
right. So I move that Ecology Club be reinstated
In the
Second.
2011, 2012.
in the 2011-2012 budget.
All right, so that's made by Laura, second by John Keane. Go for the vote. Anybody want to talk? Okay. Go for the vote, Marion.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Welch?
No.
Mr. Gritchen?
Yes.
Ms. Ruska?
Yes.
Dr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Cindy?
No. All right, so Ecology Club stays in. We have to find a way to get $1,729.
Well, they were higher than the number we originally shooting for, though, right? You told us, right, Pam?
Yes.
So really, you were cutting more than your original projection was necessary, so you're still cutting more than the original projection by adding the 1,700, right?
Okay,
Is that correct, Pam?
Got it.
Okay.
We're
All right.
close,
So
exactly,
then
almost
let's-
at it, almost exactly at
then
it.
the next thing that you have is, besides Ecology Club, a motion to approve the reduction activities and club stipends as presented.
I'd like to have discussion on wellness. I don't think we finished that. I know you wanted to, because part of the referendum, I'm not satisfied that we talked about that. Part of doing the rebuild in this building is we promised that that wellness center would be more accessible. And I still hear from the community that the wellness center is not accessible, like we promised for the $63 million that the community gave us.
How many health classes do you have for
I think
outside
it's-
people?
Well, I just,
Well, it is, but
I guess I
it's
wanted to
not.
comment on that. We actually opened it up to the community twice, and we could not get enough people to register to pay for a supervisor. We only got 8 people 2 times throughout the year for 2 8-week sessions. We tried to open it to the community, to the members, to adults, and we could not get enough people to come. I mean, the kids after school, yes, but they will get that in wellness class. They get it. We're actually going to add an extra day to wellness. We have 1 day a week that they go. We're going to add an extra day on top of all the normal fitness things that we do. But we did try to do that to make that a point because that's what we said. But we just didn't get enough people to sign up.
In due respect, I don't believe that was communicated well enough, because everybody I know is still saying, and what about the wellness center? We were promised during the campaign to do the renovation of the school.
Well, I think that's something we could throw back out there, because that's just generated
As long as
revenue
it's
for.
cost neutral, yeah.
That's not this stipend.
This was
That
for
stipend
kids.
is
This
for
was
the
for
kids,
kids.
not for
Kids.
the community.
Which there
But
wasn't a lot of
we can certainly
participation.
open that back up, and as long as we get enough to cover the cost to have somebody supervise, we can certainly do that.
Well, if we are going to, Dr. Burnett did say the $25 was for clubs. And if we can't, and the $25 per student would bring in $3,700. I philosophically am opposed to applying the entire $25 to the bottom line.
It's going towards
We
textbooks.
Right.
As the superintendent on July 1st, I worked with the administration to redefine what that $25 would be applied for, so that it's not
It's on the
strictly
next
just for
page.
Yeah, it's co-curricular fee is the
Right
annual
here.
fee to help offset
So
textbooks,
you
general
just-
supplies.
You
We
just
just updated.
redefined. So if I may finish my sentence, because we have always been led to believe, prior to you coming on board, that that money was being brought in for these clubs, I think wellness is so important. I would like to at least save one more of these clubs. The wellness, we can't have it enough. We need to,
All I'm saying right now is the wellness supervisors that you have right now in this position was for students.
that's what I'm
It wasn't
asking for,
outside community
for
members.
students.
And as Artis said, the participation rate of students when it was available was very, very low. It wasn't, you know what I mean? So what I'm saying right now is, we made a commitment that if the referendum did not pass, we would make cuts. Staff has come back in November and said, these are the cuts we're gonna make. We've already just thrown out one cut that they made a recommendation on, which was the Ecology Club. What I'm saying going forward is, then the rest of the cuts is what staff is recommending, which will not hurt, greatly impact, would not be the worst impact for the students. Am I right in saying that, Pam? That this is what you looked at to be able to make it happen. Now, if we're gonna vote for every club to make sure that we keep it or don't keep it, and start picking it through there, they made that decision because nobody was coming to that wellness center. And those were hours, they were morning and afternoon, so.
All right, then I'm,
And then here, Laura, can I say to you right now,
Okay.
what I would throw back to Art is saying like this: get the community going on this, see if we can try to do it again. If you get a lot of community people in there, maybe the amount of money that you have, it can generate, can maybe refund these back in there to make it revenue neutral.
okay, President Cindy, in due respect, as a philosophy and as being on that referendum team, I'm going to move that we bring back the wellness supervisors for the students.
All right?
I'll
For
second
the-
it.
Okay. For the 2012.
For the
2011,
2011-2012 school
All right, we have a
year.
motion, a second. Anybody want to discuss?
I'm
Second
gonna-
by Dan Moon.
No.
John
Oh,
Key.
John Key, I'm sorry.
I'm going to vote no, and I'm going to vote no on everything that you bring up, because, a year ago, we told them to put a plan in place, communicate it to the community, and I made a commitment that whatever we tell the community, that's what I'm going to support. I'm not going to tell the community, we're going to cut this, we're going to cut this, and we're going to cut this, and then the referendum doesn't pass, and guess what? We're going to reinstate this, we're going to reinstate that, we're going to reinstate this. That's not what I'm going to vote for.
But Mike, that hasn't
I'm
been
not
true.
done.
Okay?
I'm just giving you my
Okay,
opinion, okay?
But you haven't done what you just told me you were
Excuse
going
me,
to do.
let him talk,
Sorry.
will you please? He let you talk, didn't he? All
Well,
right,
you
go
cut me
ahead.
off all night, so
All
no.
right, Mike, go ahead.
And so, they worked long and hard and made these tough decisions, of which we hire them for. We hire the superintendent to oversee the building principal and the people to come up with a plan that's going to include a lot of cuts that are going to affect a lot of kids. And And that's the bottom line, because there was no referendum vote to increase the amount of money that we get to spend. So I'm gonna vote no for anything you wanna bring back into the budget, because I don't want the perspective out there that says, well, we don't have to vote for the referendum next time, because you know what? They're gonna bring back all this stuff anyway. And so that's kind of what I was hearing in the community, that, oh, you know, we're not gonna vote for the referendum because the cuts are just threats. Well, this is an overall plan that I've talked about before. It's a big puzzle, okay? This is one little piece, and this one little piece, whether we're talking about the $25 increase to the fee, or we're talking about approving these amount of the cuts to these amount of the clubs, that overall plan, these two little pieces, I'm gonna vote to keep that plan intact, because that's what we told the community as a board we were gonna do. Now, I understand there's been a turnover of board members, and, you know, to help Tim with his thing, he wanted to understand why I would vote no. On the prior vote, I'm gonna vote no on this motion too, because of those reasons.
Thank you. But let me, do you want to go, Laura, or do you want me to say?
I'm just gonna say, as a board member, you know, like, you're gonna vote no because you said you would vote no. Well, when I was on the board and we did that referendum, we said, that wellness center was part of our philosophy, and we were gonna make it available. And if we're having low attendance, I think we need to do something to have that out there. That was something we promised to the community a long time ago, and people are paying for that now.
But we've tried it with the community, and it didn't, I mean, we tried it with the students, and it didn't generate the participation.
Can I
You
say
can bring a
something?
horse to water, but if you can't force them to drink.
Matt,
Yeah.
Pam, in case I missed this, the original projection that Mike's talking about was a 113,412. Your current proposal is to cut 129,483, right?
Correct.
So we actually, based on the recommendation, we're cutting 16,000 more. So adding in the 1720.
Because of the board accounts that we didn't figure, and, yeah.
Okay, so we added in 1729 for the one person.
I think
If we added in the please let me finish.
Sorry, Tim.
If we added the 4,000, and we'd still be, I just want to make one thing clear. Based on the numbers you're giving us, we'd still be 10,000 more in cuts than was proposed to the community. So I don't want the message being left that we are not paying attention to what we did, because we're cutting more if we do this. However, I feel like you're mixing apples and oranges, Laura. This wellness is for kids. It's not for the community. And Art's saying only 10 kids are showing up. You know, I don't think it's worth it to spend that much money for 10 kids showing up. If it was for the community and kids could show up, I would support it. But he's got an idea that'll go out to the community again, and I presume if we open it up to the community for fees, kids could still come.
Well, that would be the next thing.
Okay, so I just telling you, I want to make sure it's clear. The proposal here is to cut more than what was put out to the community. And by adding one item in, we're still going to cut more.
Right, not to cut additional clubs, but that there was additional revenue in the budget that
Right.
we hadn't considered. We were just talking about stipends
Yeah.
at that point.
So by adding
Yeah.
in one, so far, we're
Right.
still cutting more. We don't want the message to get out there, we're not being fiscally responsible, because we're cutting more than what we proposed, even by adding one. So,
All right.
And mine was more like the items rather than the bottom line money.
okay.
All right.
We just need the board to understand, as Pam did find these extra dollars this week, we also are finding that we might need to use these dollars somewhere else that we did not budget for.
Well, that's been Gary's point all along.
And a
Right.
six-figure.
We're doing this
So
piece.
that's why before we start adding things back, and Tim, I didn't mean to try to interrupt you, that's what I wanted to say before. Although we are exceeding our budgeted line, or the amount of cuts we want to get, we might need to add a section of a class back on, because we might be understaffed in that area with transfers and some of that stuff. So we need to make sure we leave a little room
Okay.
for flexibility.
All right, we have a motion. Do you have anything more to say, or?
Well, you know, we spent several meetings talking about sports. If we had the extra money, I think maybe other board members would look at it and say, maybe there's a couple of clubs here that are who we are as a school. You know, there are clubs, so if the wellness, if you say you'd open the community, those kids can go in there. It's not my druthers, but I would go with that. But if we look at like maybe the math team. That's who we are as a school. We excel, our students excel, and so if the clubs have taken a disproportionate, and the clubs offer opportunities for our students. We're going to ask more activity money. I think we ought to give the clubs at least a little bit of attention. It won't even come close to the amount of time we spend on the sports.
Okay. All right. Any more? Mary Ann, can we go for the vote? We have a motion and a second.
Mr.
Well,
Welch?
wait, give people a chance to talk.
Well, I said anybody else, and
Well, but you just,
I said anybody else. Laura
and
said
then
I
you
have
started,
anything
you
else.
said, anything else, vote.
Okay,
Just-
because
just
Laura was the only
Pause
one.
for 5 seconds.
All right, I'm
That's all
pausing for 5
asking.
seconds. 1, 2, anybody else?
I have something to say. I think it's okay for us to micromanage in a small way, the cuts the administration makes. So I support the thing with the ecology club. But overall, I think in this, we're talking about the wellness, it's an apple and orange thing. I really think we need to do a better job of trying to get the community involved, let them aware of this facility if it's available. And in that way, if kids want to use it, they can use it. So I'm going to vote no for this proposal.
All right, anybody else? All right, Mary Ann, can we go for the vote?
Mr. Welch?
What are we voting for, please?
You're voting for keeping wellness supervisors in a motion that you made. Okay,
Oh, wait.
Mr. Welch?
Hold on.
Oh,
Is that what we're voting on?
Yes,
Marion, whether we're going to keep wellness?
Wellness.
Okay.
Mr. Welch.
No.
Mr. Gritchen?
No.
Ms. Ruska?
Present.
Dr. King?
No.
Mr. Moon?
No.
Mr. Welch?
No.
Mr. Cindy?
No. Okay, then we need a motion to agree to the proposed reduction activity in clubs excluding ecology club. That should be in the motion. Do I have a motion for that?
Resolved that the Board of Education, Township High School District 208, Cook County, Illinois hereby approves the reduction in activities and club stipends as presented in the July 12th, 2011 Board Agenda Packet, except for the change on the previous motion to Ecology Club.
Do I have a second? Second by Gary Gritchen. Any discussion? Mary Ann, go for the vote.
Mr. Gritchen?
Yes.
Ms. Ruska?
Yes.
Dr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Aye.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Mr. Cindy?
Yes.